LEGO Technic, its product line, has come a long way and undergone many changes along the way. And in the last half decade in particular, a number of licensed hypercars and luxury cars at roughly a 1:16 scale have been introduced, much like the McLaren Senna first released in 2021. They don't have their own sub-theme, although they have been called the car transporter sets informally, with reference to the set that may or may not have started this whole trend. While many LEGO Technic fans can't get enough of these sets because of their fun, engaging designs at an affordable price, not all of the releases have been met with praise. And in fact, some content creators seem to be really pleading official LEGO designers to do something about it. With the latest releases this year, there's finally just enough sets at this scale, in this category, to make a meaningful top 10 list. In this video, I want to talk about my top 10 with a twist. I also want to talk about some of the ideas, improvements, and modifications from the general LEGO fan base community to hopefully inspire you and help you to enjoy any of these sets which you may have to the full. To start off the list, I want to talk about the Toyota Supra 42204. The Toyota Supra has featured in different iterations in both the Fast and Furious film as well as Gran Turismo, for example. And it's quite a recognizable sports car that had its own moment in the history of sports car racing. First, let's start with the good. There's a nice combination of system and technic parts which you often find with cars at this scale. The building is challenging but not daunting. Again, something common at this scale. By the way, the rear lights are stickered, so if you have this set, why not try to challenge yourself and create your own brick-built rear lights, taking some inspiration from similar sets. Now, let's talk about the bad and the ugly. While I have seen some very nice brick-built front headlights for cars at this scale and from alternative brands, many fans feel that the front headlights here, built with small panels, really just don't work. While some are disappointed that this set is not at a compatible scale with other sets from this franchise, I feel a real problem with this set is more generally that the designers took on the task of replicating one of the most memorable and iconic cars from pop culture and racing history in a style and scale that just doesn't easily lend itself to the smooth, rounded curves of the Toyota Supra. Next up, let's talk about the Top Gear Rally Car 42109. While this Technic car is at practically the same scale as the rest of the cars on this list, using the same wheels and the same mudguard pieces, I don't think it's commonly associated with the rest of the cars on this list, the so-called car transporter sets. And it's more often compared to the remote control buggy 42124, but I have chosen this car for a reason. There's no direct connection with the Top Gear show, and I do appreciate the licensing. I think that this set demonstrates that it is possible to have branding or licensing while also having a generic build that doesn't try to replicate a specific model. The design and approach here is in some ways the opposite of the Toyota Supra we talked about. Where the previous design was based on a very well-known model and attempts to capture its shape and essence, this build is not trying to be something it's not. It's a somewhat generic rally car with some nice part usage, design details, and the Top Gear branding. There are not a lot of building techniques used, and a lot of stickers are used where there could have been brick-built details, but that's because this build also offers something that has a lot of support from fans: motorization. This set proves that it is possible to have a remote control motor setup at this scale. And this is something you will see throughout this video as a common modification for sets at this scale. But at this point I want to ask you, what do you think? Should sets at this scale be motorized? Or should they have a working motor? Should sets at this scale be licensed sports cars or just generic builds? For the next spot, let's talk about the Chevrolet Corvette Stingray 42205. the Chevrolet Corvette has a decent history of its own and in the world of motorsports. Generally speaking, the LEGO model is also a very nice build. Many of the improvements from previous sets can be seen in this car design. For example, the engine cover opens and the new piston and cam parts are clearly visible, used together with a differential. There are also a lot of new parts included and introduced, as well as many of the small and medium panel fairings used for sets at this scale. However, as with the Toyota Supra, the curves and shaping of the car is a challenge, but the designers have done a relatively good job, and if you are a fan of the car in real life, I don't see why you shouldn't own this LEGO Technic companion. For my next pick, let's talk about the Ferrari FXX 42212 from 2025. When you think Ferrari, you think style, you think sleek curved lines and angles, and that's just what you get with the real-life Ferrari FXX-K. And I must say, this LEGO Technic car design looks good. The model is very recognizable. Something that LEGO enthusiasts, collectors and sellers alike will appreciate is the new parts coming with the set, including this new flattened mudguard part. The builds, as we've seen, are fun and not tedious, which is perfect for younger audiences as well as adults, and it's something that really makes these builds work well. By the way, there have been other Ferrari FXX LEGO sets at a different scale, including a 6-stud wide Speed Champions version from a few years ago, which only enhances the display value of this set. So if you haven't done so, why don't you try to put together the corresponding Speed Champions set to display them together. All in all, for many fans, Ferrari will always be Ferrari. Next up on my list, let's talk about the Bugatti Bolide 42151. In terms of the car, it's designed as a track-only hypercar, and the name itself refers to a meteorite blazing across the sky. So you can just imagine the speed and the appeal for LEGO builders. The set looks a bit incomplete at first, but compared to the actual car, I would say the designers did a really good job. The later sets have almost consistently used the new Technic piston and crank disc, but this is the only set I've seen so far that uses the Technic cam element for the engine, and I think it's actually one of the more unique engine designs. Just like many smaller curved parts seem to have been introduced specifically for the Speed Champions line, a number of smaller panel fairing parts seem to have been introduced for these sets, and it's with this particular set that you really notice them, since they have been used quite extensively. The engine does not fully open, but I have found at least one mock version in which it does. There is also no standard differential, so why not try to redesign this for yourself to include one? What I can say for sure is that there are a few motorized versions, and personally I would go for the buggy motor version, since that's sure to be the fastest and sleekest. It's time for us to talk about the Aston Martin Valkyrie 42208. I don't know if I should call this a beauty or a beast of a car. In any case, it's designed to be enjoyed as a road car, but also has some serious Formula One specs and vibes. The new LEGO release also incorporates a lot of lessons learned from previous sets. The doors open, of course, the engine cover opens, and there's a variety of parts used, including the new Technic piston and crank disc. And I, for one, have been waiting for a long time for more of these curved mud guards to become more widely available in Bricklink. For many fans, the shaping of the driver's cockpit and the front of the car is an issue, and it's the first thing they see. There has been a big focus on Formula One cars this year, and I wonder if the smaller Mercedes-AMG Formula One would be considered part of this lineup at the same scale. Personally, I'm very happy that the Formula E second generation car was represented in LEGO in the Speed Champions theme with Jaguar, as well as at this scale under the Porsche licensing, and that is my next pick. I really like the design not only of the real-life car, but also the LEGO Technic build. It's clearly recognizable and captures the essence of the Gen 2 design. I think it's relatively easy to incorporate different colors for the different real-life teams that competed during the run of the second generation Formula E car, or even to create a team of your own imagination. Apart from the design, I also appreciate the pullback motor as a way to add functionality and play. I talked about the Top Gear remote control rally car, but if fully motorized sets is not your thing, or you don't want to spend that amount of money, another option for cars at this scale is to have a pullback motor, and this set has two. My number 3 pick is the McLaren Senna 42123. The McLaren catalogue, including the P1, the F1 and the McLaren Senna, is truly impressive and inspiring. When I see how these cars perform, I really feel the hair on my chest. And of course, the McLaren Senna is named after the Brazilian driver Ayrton Senna, who also features in the Icons McLaren Senna, creating a nice connection between the Icons theme, Technic sets and even the Speed Champion 6-stud wide set of the same name. This Lego set really inspired Lego builders and creators when it came out. There's a lot of nice angles used for the build and for the chassis in particular, which is something that makes the building experience more enjoyable. I know the front section of this car is a bit airy or incomplete, but it is a bit of a difficult shape to replicate. I do prefer one of the front section mods I found on Rebrickable, and generally speaking, I appreciate fans having a go at improving and building on from the official Lego designs. Because this was one of the first cars made at this scale, there was no real differential, and a simple axle and bushes setup was used for the motor, unlike later sets. However, you can find a few modifications with a real differential and even a few motorized versions if that's what you're looking for with these sets. All in all, for me, there was never a doubt that this would be in my top 3. For my number 2 pick, we need to talk about the Lamborghini Huracan Technica 42161 from 2023. Lamborghini has a long history of good car designs, and this is also the case with the entire Huracan line. When it comes to the design, look and feel of the Lego set, this is one of my favorite cars. It clearly looks like a Lamborghini. The color scheme is appealing and it's just worth it for the building experience alone. It has been noted that the Lime version has inconsistent colors across parts, and the colors are more consistent with the orange version. There is a big gap between the mudguard and the panel fairing towards the back, but I have found at least one decent redesign that seems to get rid of the gap. There is also a Power Functions motorized version as well as a buggy motor version. All in all, this is one of my favorite builds and very much worth getting. My number 1 pick is none other than the Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute 42184 from 2024. First of all, it's truly impressive what companies such as Koenigsegg and Nevada are creating, setting new records and creating vehicles that are out of this world. And when it comes to the Lego set, it simply checks all the boxes. There's a nice combination of system and Technic parts, almost a kind of hybrid build. I mean, there's even Bionicle wing elements. There's a long steering rack used for the dihedral synchro helix door mechanism, adding an extra layer of functionality and authenticity. It even has a Speed Champions companion to display alongside. In general, this car is a complex Technic assembly and satisfying build. In conclusion, there's a few points we can say about these sets. Some of them perfectly capture the design and appeal of the real-life cars at a scale that makes the build thoroughly enjoyable without getting boring and tedious. But that's not the case with all of the sets. Some of the sets don't really remind you very much of their real-life counterpart, and the idea is that if it's not possible to recreate the subtle form of a particular car, why even try? Why not just make a generic hypercar with only a hint of inspiration from some well-known vehicle? However, hopefully with this video I have also shown the value of these builds and how the different mocks and mods coming from the fan-based community only continues to add value. and in some cases perhaps even improve the official build. There's more coming on Technic builds and icon sets, so please subscribe if you haven't done so, and I will see you in the next one.